I am Arlene T. Penn, and I am the Director of Communications with the Government of the Virgin Islands. And this afternoon's press briefing is with Deputy Premier and the Minister for Natural Resources and Labor, Dr. the Honorable Kedrick Pickering. Today, we do have in this room with us Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor, Mr. Ronald Smith Berkeley. We also have the Acting Chief Conservation and Fisheries Officer, Mr. Kelvin Penn. We also have another member of his team, Mr. Mervyn Hastings, who is the Acting Deputy Chief Conservation Officer. And we do have Mr. Lloyd Williams, who is the manager of the BVI Fishing Complex. In today's press briefing, Honorable Deputy Premier will give an update of the fishing industry. As you know, there are discussions about making the industry a third economic pillar. Additionally, the Honorable Minister will speak about the Sargassum seaweed that we continue to see arriving at our shores. The format this afternoon is as such. The Minister will first address you. Thereafter, he will open the floor for questions, at which point you are to state your name and the media house for which you represent. And I now invite to the lectern our Deputy Premier and the Minister for Natural Resources and Labor, Dr. the Honorable Kedrick Pickering.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Penn. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you all for coming this afternoon. We wish to give you an update on a couple of issues that are current and topical. And I'll first start with giving you an update on the Sargassum seaweed. So let's talk about what it is really. The Sargassum is a brown algae. It's a seaweed that floats free in the ocean, and it really never attaches to the ocean floor. And these free-floating forms are only found in the Atlantic Ocean. That's important for us to understand and appreciate that Sargassum provides refuge for migratory species and essential habitat for some 120 species of fish and more than 120 species of invertebrates. It's an important nursery habitat that provides shelter and food for endangered species such as sea turtles and for commercially important species of fish such as tunas and the mahi-mahi. There are two species of Sargassum involved in the Sargassum influx, Sargassum natans and the Sargassum fluitans. Sargassum travels on ocean currents. Scientists are able to determine where the Sargassum actually comes from by backtracking from its standing location using ocean models and data on the movements of the satellite trackers that are deployed at sea. It is believed that the recent influxes that we are seeing are related to massive Sargassum blooms occurring in particular areas of the Atlantic above the North Equatorial Current, not directly associated with the Sargasso Sea. And it's important to emphasize that the seaweed that we are seeing now is not directly associated with the Sargasso Sea, where nutrients are available and the temperatures themselves are high. It is in that region that the Sargassum consolidates into large mats and windrows and is transported by ocean currents towards and throughout the Caribbean. And that is why countries like Trinidad, Belize, and even West Africa, for the first time, are receiving massive amounts of Sargassum washing up on their shores. Sargassum occurs naturally on the beaches, albeit in smaller quantities, and it plays a role in beach nourishment and is an important element of the shoreline stability. Sand dune plants need nutrients from the Sargassum and seabirds. For example, the seabirds depend on sea life carried in the Sargassum for their food. Now, during the decomposition, there will inevitably be smell and insects around. The experience in locations that have left Sargassum on the beach is that it will eventually get washed away or buried in the next storm, with rain easing the smell. Leaving the Sargassum on the beach has proven to be the simplest and lowest cost approach, also helping to nourish the beach and stabilize the shoreline. When large mats of sargassum lands on beach and mounds of 3 feet and greater are present, it is recommended to remove the excess sargassum as it is not allowed to dry properly, and it begins to decompose at a much slower rate, causing a prolonged odor, and in some conditions, marine life to die due to the oxygen being depleted in the water by the decomposing bacteria. Now, is it really harmful? In the water, the seaweed is harmless. But once it lands on the beach and starts decomposing, that is when it starts releasing hydrogen sulfide. Now, this gas is a colorless, somewhat poisonous and highly flammable gas, and it spreads a very unpleasant odor. But there's no need to be significantly alarmed, as the gas can only be detrimental to one's health in concentrated amounts when that person, that individual, is enclosed in the spaces. Spaces, for example, if you were enclosed in somewhere like a sewer. So while hydrogen sulfide is classified as toxic, and the higher temperatures of the summer months increase the rate of bacterial decay in open, ventilated spaces like the beach and bays, the concentration of it in the air is not harmful. And although some doctors indicate that inhaling the gas in small doses could trigger irritation of the eyes and respiratory system, again, you'll have to be exposed to a tremendous amount of the gas for it to create problems. Now, the species of the pelagic sargassum involved in the influx here are different from those grown as sea moss in the Caribbean and sometimes used in food and drinks. New uses of sargassum collected from beach strandings are being developed, such as biofuel, fertilizer, and livestock feed or fish food, for example. Here's what we are planning to do in the BVI with respect to the sargassum. We have launched an educational campaign in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture and Environmental Health. We're embarking on a cleanup campaign to include all the service clubs and other community-minded individuals. And we hope that this major national cleanup will take place in the 1st to mid-October. And we're encouraging everyone to stay tuned so that they can participate. We're looking at the possibility of using the seaweed in a way to be used as fertilizer. And we're hoping to start a pilot project at Paraquita Bay and ultimately throughout other areas in the BVI where farming is taking place. We're also looking at the viability of collecting the sargassum to be used in areas affected by beach erosion. But it's important that care is taken while this is done, as we have to avoid damaging the sand dunes and to avoid impacting the sea turtle nesting and bird nesting habitat. We're embarking on some research, and we are continuously investigating what our colleagues in the region are doing, as well as all available scientific information which will inform our local efforts. And on that point, I want to emphasize that this is a regional-wide effort. It is important for us to understand that no one country or no individual territory has the knowledge and expertise to be able to deal with this problem. And so we're pooling resources throughout the wider Caribbean in order to come up with the best possible solutions on how to deal with this problem. Now, we've recently discovered that the purpose-built machine may not be a viable option to deal with this problem, as the floating mats of seaweed are spawning grounds for many species of fish. And some people think that there is a silver bullet, but there is none. So even the idea of having some special purpose vehicle to help remove the seaweed from the ocean is not on the top of the agenda, as it has not been shown to be the best possible approach. Now I want to turn my attention to the fishing industry. On Friday, the 1st of March 2013, we at the ministry held an annual National Fishermen Conference, during which time fishermen and key interagency members looked at the strengths and weaknesses of the fishing industry and the fishing sector in general. Coming out of that conference, we put together what we consider the key outcomes. And these were that there was an increasing need for collaboration between the government and the fishermen. There was a discussion on sustainable development practices of this sector and how it will impact the wider economy, with a specific reference to how do we maintain our nearshore habitat, how do we maintain and protect our coral reefs. The whole question of the biodegradable panels, specifically the fish pots, commonly referred to as the ghost traps. We were looking at how to observe the closed seasons and how to further protect the areas where the spawning grounds are located. And then the third thing that we were looking at as a big item was the creation of a harmonized vision for the fishing sector, which in reality is the development of a viable and vibrant sector that will provide much needed jobs and revenue in what we consider to be the wider development of the fishing industry to become one of the pillars of the economy. With respect to the fishing industry, we have increased our carrying capacity with the purchase and installation of another freezer at the fishing complex. And this measures 20 feet by 16 feet in size. This increased carrying capacity was complemented by 2 vacuum seal machines and 2 medium-sized blast freezers, and we invite you to take a look at them when you have a chance so you can get a better sense of how they function and how they impact the wider fishing industry. We've refurbished the existing ice machines. We now have ice not only for the use at the complex itself, but for the fishermen. And I think it's fair to say that we no longer run out of ice for the fishermen to be able to use. We've improved, and this is extremely important, we've improved on the turnaround of payment for the fishermen. On average, it's taken about a week now for the fishermen to get paid. Now, when I took over the ministry, the number one complaints by the fishermen was the length of time that it took from the time when they deposited their fish at the complex and the time it took for them to be able to get paid. And that was a major impediment for the fishermen to actually sell their fish to the fishing complex. Extremely important also is the fact that in October 2013, we ceased the importation of fish at the fishing complex. And we've adopted a policy that all fish sold at the fishing complex is local. And that is self-explanatory in terms of what that means for the fishermen. The first 2 quarters of 2015, there was a significant decrease in the amount of products being landed. But this was mainly attributed to the increased surface temperatures forcing the fish to seek cooler temperatures in the deeper ocean. Flip the page now, and what we have seen is that those major decreases in landing have been observed in one particular type of fish, and we have seen an increase in the other types of fish, so that the complex is now receiving large volumes of pelagic species, which can be attributed to the increase in the fishes that have been targeting these species with the introductions of the fats. And it can be also attributed to the increase of the Sargassum weed flowing into the beaver waters, which is attracting these species into our area. The beaver fishing complex is now ready to offer, in a very consistent manner, a better variety of non-reef species with choice cuts such as fillets, steaks, and other portion control size. And we're embarking on a major campaign right now to be able to do a major marketing campaign because of the quantity of fish and the quality of fish that have been supplied to the fishing complex. And just for your reference, here are some figures for 2013, 2014, and 2015. For the year 2013, yellowtail grouper snapper, hard nose, and other podfish, we bought 137,774 pounds of that species. The pelagics, the deep sea fish, the tuna, the wahoo, the dolphin, we purchased 7,977 pounds of that type of fish. In 2014, we purchased 159,602 pounds of the yellowtail grouper snapper, etc. And the deep sea fish, tuna, wahoo, dolphin, we purchased 8,539 pounds. And to date, in 2015, up to the end of September, we've purchased 83,525 pounds of the yellowtail, grouper, snapper, hard-nosed, and other pot fish. But with respect to the tuna, wahoo, and dolphin, we've purchased 16,000, double what we bought for the other 2 years already, up to this point in time. So it shows you that there's a shift in the methods and the interests of the fishermen, because they now understand that the market is being prepared for them to bring in the fish. The ministry and the department is now partnering with the some local individuals to embark on a marketing program to promote the industry. Because, and I hate to say this in one breath, and I'm delighted to say it in the next breath, that right now we have an oversupply of fish. We invite you to go visit the fishing complex. We are almost full to capacity in terms of our storage with the amount of fish that we have. And that is a direct consequence of how much fish the fishermen are landing at the fishing complex. So it is a good problem to have, and it speaks volumes. So right now we are looking at the whole issue of how we can help to market this fish. We are looking at probably some price reduction on some species. We are looking at extended operating hours, especially on Saturdays. The fishermen think that we probably should be open until 5 on Saturdays. And we are embarking on a radio program in which we are going to have a slot in the mornings on one of the radio stations to be able to give an update of not only what is happening at the fishing complex, but what fish are available at this specific time and what the prices are. All part and parcel of our promotional campaign to help now sustain our fishing industry. So I want to thank you all for coming. Hope that we have shared with you some of what is taking place, and we'll be happy to take your questions at this point in time.
Johan Earl, Virgin Islands News Online. To start with the Sargassum problem, you mentioned some of the possible health effects, but albeit they need to be in really large doses or concentrations for the effect to be felt. Has the government put out any sort of advisories, warnings to stay away from maybe the places that has a lot of sargassum, where the smell is really pungent, where it's rotting a lot, especially people with problems, let's say asthma, or problems with their eyes or something like that. Those people may be more susceptible than regular other people, with regards to some of those effects. And on what you said about the fish and the larger influx of fish, and I think you made a connection to the sargassum attracting as nesting grounds for some of these species. If you could speak a little bit more about that. Is there a nexus between the larger influx of certain species of fish with the influx of the sargassum seaweed?
All right, thank you very much, and I'll take your second question first. The answer is yes, there's a definite association with the sargassum. Understand that the sargassum, the seaweed by itself, is a nesting ground, both for fish and a place for birds, especially migratory birds. So that naturally occurring, the seaweed provides that nexus. The large influx of the seaweed as it is right now, therefore, it speaks volumes to the fact that there'll be naturally an increase in the amount of fish that is inhabiting the seaweed. But more specifically, what we've noticed, and you may want to take a visit to the fishing complex, is that the mahi-mahi in particular seem to follow the seaweed. And the fishermen have been bringing in large quantities of that particular species of fish, more than we've ever seen at this point in time and at this time of the year. So that, from that point of view, there's a definite association with the seaweed. Now, with respect to the first question that you asked, you'll recall one of the things that I said just now was that as a part of what we're doing right now is an educational campaign. And so the point that you raised about educating individuals to stay away from some of these areas will form part of that campaign. Because it is true that any toxic fumes anywhere, somebody with respiratory conditions should, of necessity, avoid exposing themselves to those specific areas. So that sort of information will form part of the educational campaign that we are embarking on.
Okay, a follow-up to your answer to the previous question. We see the other side where, and we have photographic evidence of this, where we see fish turning up. I think Mr. Penn made a statement to one of the news sites regarding some of the fish kills and lobster and other sea life. What are the circumstances that would lead to, I think you mentioned depletion of oxygen in the water because of the decomposing seaweed. So what are the circumstances that would lead to the fish kills?
Well, to first appreciate that when, especially close to the shoreline, what you see with the naked eye is oftentimes just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. So you see the seaweed. What you don't see is the depth of the seaweed that is actually existing in that particular place at that point in time. And in some cases, it could actually be several feet thick. Effectively, what happens is that the thicker the seaweed is, the less amount of sunlight can penetrate. And beyond a certain point, no sunlight penetrates. So therefore, the normal processes of photosynthesis does not take place. So on the deeper levels, there's a depletion of oxygen within the immediate environment. And so the animals living in that immediate environment are now exposed to a different environment, an environment that suddenly becomes toxic to their very existence. And as a result, you would have noticed that in the areas where the fish have been dying, it is related to how thick the seaweed is in that particular area. You notice it's not necessarily a widespread problem, so to speak.
Okay, good afternoon. Crystal Kanyuk from the BVI Beacon newspaper. On a similar note, we saw that there was a big die-off in Handsome Bay. Have there been any tests to confirm that this was due to oxygen depletion?
Well, that's presuming there is a test to be done. You know, what the Conservation and Fisheries Department is doing a wider analysis of the environment, looking at the water itself, the soil, the sand and everything, to see if there's anything else taking place that has not previously been detected. So it's to say whether it is one thing or not, it's impossible to say, because these tests could show up something that had never been shown up before, and we may not necessarily have the exact facilities to test for everything. So we're going to be collaborating with the wider Caribbean and probably beyond to see if in other areas our colleagues who are involved in this type of work have noticed anything that we haven't picked up. And this is how research is conducted, by pooling information and knowledge. And out of this, we expect that as time evolves, we'll have a better understanding of the processes that are taking place.
Right, so I understand that some of these fish kills have happened in other places, and we know that that can happen because of oxygen depletion. Is there a way, maybe this is for Mr. Hastings or Mr. Penn?
No, only the minister can answer questions.
Okay, so is there a way to confirm whether that was the cause of this recent kill that we saw?
Like I say, it's a fluid situation. It's a work in progress, and only time will tell what, if anything, is discovered other than we know already.
And if I could, just one more related to the sargassum. Is this also the cause behind some of the water problems that we've seen in Virgin Gorda, and now we're having the pipes being flushed out?
You know, again, that's a very interesting question because of the close proximity to the water outfall at Handsome Bay. So the Water and Sewage Department and the Conservation and Fisheries Department are working very closely to try and understand what is taking place and to see if there's a direct correlation. At this point in time, it's only speculation to see exactly if that's what it is and what remedial conditions would be necessary to avoid it if that is what it is.
Good afternoon, Sean Rose, JTV News. Deputy Premier, while the analysis and the research processes are ongoing, folks on Virgin Gorda have indicated that with the recent increase in the arrival of the seaweed over the last 2 years or so, they have noticed silverware in their homes turning from silver to brown and rust in some cases. And apart from the water concerns and the smell, they are wondering how soon they will have a better understanding of the situation. Now, you said the research is ongoing, but is it too early to tell that some corrective measures can be taken to prevent the deposit of the seaweed to the extent that it is happening now?
Well, in response to the latter part of your statement, stroke question, I think it is extremely important to emphasize that the phenomena now hitting the wider Caribbean and to some extent all of the countries lining the Caribbean Sea, including the Gulf of Mexico, that this is a phenomena that is not going anywhere in a hurry. The best scientific evidence available to us at this point in time suggests that this could be the quote-unquote new normal, and that one of the best approach to dealing with this situation has to be patience, because there's no silver bullet to remedying the situation, and there's no obvious end in sight to what is taking place, because the ultimate belief and understanding thus far is that this is all part and parcel of climate change. And so unless the direct effects of climate change themselves are reversed, we're likely to have to get accustomed to this phenomena being with us for the foreseeable future.
And while we get accustomed, second question, the deposits for the most part are easily caught in the areas where you have reefs, such as that Handsome Bay stretch all the way down to the Virgin Gorda Airport area. And as a result, as you explained a while ago, a lot of the marine life living in that area, they are affected. Would you be willing to consider harvesting some of that seaweed before it gets to the areas where you have reef and where you have a lot of marine life?
The answer is no, because again, the best available scientific evidence and advice is that it would be a mistake to try and remove the seaweed while it is floating, again because of the fact that it is a nursery for the fishing species. But not only that, it would be a logistical nightmare, because it isn't something that is going to ease up tomorrow. It is something that is with us. So learning, understanding, and appreciate how to deal with it is where the focus is at this point in time. So we are learning from our colleagues in the wider Caribbean how they've done it. And as we understand it, we are going to try and implement it and see how best it will work for us. Ultimately, best practices throughout the region will be shared amongst all of us, and hopefully in the not too distant future we'll have not only a solution, but solutions to the wider problem, understanding that this is the quote-unquote new normal for us who are bordering the Caribbean Sea and the surrounding areas. I want to say thanks to all of you for joining us. I hope we've been able to answer your question and share some information that will be beneficial to the rest of the territory. Thank you very much.